I have complained about the LSAT's online testing interface for years. So when LSAC announced a brand new interface for the August test, I was genuinely excited. I figured that after all that, almost anything would be an improvement. And so I sat down with the demo they just posted, and honestly, I want the old one back. I've been teaching the LSAT for over 20 years. I didn't like the old interface, and so when I tell you I want it back, that should kind of tell you something. If you're taking the August LSAT or later, you're going to want to hear this because what's in this new interface will affect your score if you're not ready for it. Now, before I get into the specifics, let me give you the backstory because it makes everything worse. This redesign was not built to make your testing experience better. Their primary goal was to improve test security and operational infrastructure behind the scenes. The interface that you interacted with was not the focus. They were solving their problems, not yours. And look, I get it. Running a testing platform across thousands of devices simultaneously, meeting federal accessibility requirements, keeping the LSAT secure given all the cheating over the past couple of years, that is a real engineering challenge. I'm not saying it's easy. But here's what happened. In the process of rebuilding the back end, they broke tools on the front end that students actually depend on. Now, these are the features that you reach for in the middle of a hard question when the clock is running and your brain is already at capacity. Every few years, LSAC changes the LSAT, and most students hear there's an update and they tune it out. There's a new color, new buttons in slightly different places, nothing that really should change how you change the test. But this time, it's not that. These are functional changes. And if you're taking the LSAT this August or later, this is what you are going to see on test day. This is the exact new interface. Now, I want to be fair, so let's start with what actually got better with the new interface. The look is cleaner, it's more polished. They added the ability to change the color scheme of the text on the screen, and that is genuinely new. If you've ever found standard black on white hard to read under test pressure, this is a real improvement. They deserve kudos for that. The full screen mode is also better. But that's about where my compliments end. The elimination tool is a disaster. Imagine that you're in a logical reasoning section, you're running low on time, and you've narrowed it down to two choices. You want to cross off the other three and focus. But in the current interface, the one I've spent years in criticizing, one click, you can cross off an answer and you're done. But in the new interface, that same action requires an extra click every single time on every answer you want to eliminate. And I know that might sound small, but think about what's happening in that moment. Your working memory is overloaded, you're watching the clock, you're under pressure. Every unnecessary action is friction that your brain did not budget for. And over the course of 35 minutes, those extra clicks add up. And we've got modern design conventions for this very thing. A small toggle icon next to each answer with one tap. This is not a hard problem to solve. They just didn't choose to solve it. Now, another thing I don't like is that the annotating of answer choices is also gone, and this one's a real loss because strong test takers don't just read answer choices, they work them. They'll underline a key phrase in an answer they're weighing. They'll circle language that feels off. They'll connect specific wording back to something in the passage. And that does two things. It leaves a visible record of your thinking on screen, and it forces the deliberate part of your brain to do the work instead of letting your instincts grab whatever sounds good. That is all gone from the choices and the question stems. You can still highlight in the passage itself, but the answers where you actually make decisions, you can't mark that up anymore. If this was part of how you work, you're gonna need a new system before August. Another bad change, you cannot deselect an answer. And this one genuinely caught me off guard. Right now, if you select answer choice B, and then you want to step back, you want to look at the question with fresh eyes, you click it again and it deselects, the question goes blank, nothing chosen. But in the new interface, once you select an answer, something is always selected. You can switch from B to D, but you cannot go back to blank. Now, a lot of experienced test takers will use deselection deliberately. You make your best guess on a first pass, you flag it, you move on, and when you come back, a question with an answer already sitting there changes how your brain approaches it. You are going to anchor to that choice whether you meant to or not. So the ability to return to a question with no prior selection is a real strategic tool, and right now it's gone. Another problem is the flagging system. Previously, you could see your flagged questions at a glance on the navigation bar. Now you've got to open a separate panel to find them. That is an extra click, an extra mental step every time you want to review what you've marked, which, if you're managing your time well, should be happening constantly. And then there's the navigation bar. Currently, you can see all the questions in your section laid out along the bottom at once, but the new interface only lets you see 10 questions at a time. There is no visual indicator for which ones you flagged. You've got to click through the pages to see the full picture. Now, that's not the biggest change on this list, of course, but if you use that bar to gauge where you're at in a section and you manage your pacing, and you should be, your process has changed. Then there is screen behavior across devices, and this one doesn't get talked about enough. The interface is going to render differently based on your computer's screen size and resolution. If you're on a larger monitor, it's workable, but if you're on a laptop, elements kind of shift around, the menus appear and disappear, and you're going to lose visibility on tools that you need. In reading comp, the passage view has some issues also. The short paragraphs are going to get split across 2 columns, even when there is room to display them as one. And of course, you're not going to get to choose your screen on test day, so you want to practice on different setups if you can, so that you know what it's going to look like if things get compressed. Now, my honest take where I land on this, LSAC did make the interface look better, but they also made it work worse. It's worse functionality wrapped in a nicer wrapper. There is so much working memory management happening during this test that any added friction eats up a real chunk of your focus. You just don't have spare cognitive bandwidth on the LSAT. You just don't. Every extra click you've got to make, every hidden panel, every moment where you're saying, hey, wait a second, where did that go? That's energy you're not spending on the question in front of you. And I know this might just be the discomfort of change to some extent. Anytime that you rearrange something people are used to, the first reaction is going to be negative. And I've thought about that. But I didn't like the old interface to begin with, and so I would think that anything new would be an upgrade, and this is not that. And so if you're in the position where you just got comfortable with the current setup and you're thinking, great, now I've got to start over, yeah, I hear you. That is exactly the situation. And the faster you accept that, the faster you can get ahead of it. Now, here's something I've learned over 20 years of coaching the LSAT that almost nobody talks about. Your score on test day is not just about how well you know the material. It's about how well you perform under the exact conditions of that specific test. The room, the timer, and the interface in front of you. I've sat with students after test day who were hitting 170 in practice and came out with a 164. And there's almost always the same thread in the debrief. Something felt off early. The test interface didn't feel or behave the way they'd trained for. It threw them off in the first section and they just couldn't recover. This is not a problem of your knowledge, it's a problem of the conditions, and it is completely preventable. Your brain under pressure does not adapt on the fly. It wants the familiar. And so when something unexpected happens at a high stakes moment, your brain treats it as a threat and diverts resources to deal with it. And those resources should have gone to the question in front of you. And so any moment of hesitation, a second of confusion, breaks your rhythm. And on a test like the LSAT, where 1 or 2 questions can move your score 2 or 3 points, that's something. And here's the other thing. Your prep platform, if you're using one of the third-party unofficial ones, they have not updated for this either. This just came out yesterday. And so if you're using one of these unofficial tools for practice and they've still got the old layout, you're training your muscle memory for an interface that no longer exists. So here's what I want you to do right now if you're taking the LSAT in August or beyond. Today, go look at the new interface on LawHub, pull up the demo. Don't study, don't time yourself. Just spend 20 minutes clicking around. Find the elimination tool, work through the flagging, practice selecting and switching answers, and try it on your laptop without an external monitor, not a big screen. The only goal here is that nothing surprises you later on test day. Then later this week, do a full timed section with the demo to expose your friction. Every moment you hesitate, every moment something doesn't feel automatic, Write it down. That's what you've got to fix now, not in August. Then before you go to the choices, write down on scratch paper the one thing the correct answer has to do in your own words. Then hold each answer choice up against that standard one at a time. Now, this is more disciplined than just marking up because you're forced to define what you're looking for before the choices start pulling you in different directions. And of course, this interface change is frustrating, but if you do it right, the adjustment can make you more accurate, not less. Now, since you can't go back to a blank question, be intentional before you flag. Make a real, considered guess first, then flag it and move on. Don't make the habit of leaving a hasty pick sitting on a question you plan to revisit because you're going to anchor to it. The habit is pick deliberately, flag, and move on. Build that habit now. Then when it comes to the navigation bar, you want to count your flags differently. Since you can't see flagged questions at a glance anymore, you want to keep a tally of those on your scratch paper. It just takes a second, and it will give you the awareness at a glance that the interface just took away. Now, of course, if there are any other changes to the interface, if they take any of my feedback into account and they fix some of it, great, I will update you, but don't wait for that. Start getting ready for the new change now. And if this was useful, share it with someone you know preparing for the LSAT in August or beyond, because most people have no idea that this is coming. And if you want my help putting together a real plan for your score goal, for your time frame, with the new interface built in from day one, I'm offering free LSAT tutoring lessons for everybody watching this now or later. The link to book that free call with me, the free tutoring lesson, is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below this video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and Instagram as well. That is an open offer for anyone watching this now or later. For those of you just joining, I offer these free lives every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you're watching this. If you find these helpful, please spread the word. The only way this grows is through word of mouth. I don't do any advertising for these lives, and the algorithm doesn't really boost them because they can't run any ads during these. So I do appreciate your support, spreading the word, sharing this to your socials, group chats, TikTok, social, Discord, subreddits, Facebook groups, wherever you're watching this, wherever you know others. I do appreciate the support. I see a ton of questions here in the chat. I will get to as many of those as I can, so keep dropping them in. ICTC was asking where you can practice with the new LSAT format. It is on your LSAC Law Hub account. They have a link to look at the new demo for those taking the LSAT in August or beyond with the new interface. If you're taking the LSAT in April or June, you're going to be using the current standard Law Hub interface. But August or beyond, they are making that change for test security reasons primarily. For those who aren't aware, there's been a lot of cheating on the LSAT over the past several years. And so LSAC is looking to level up their test security to prevent the capture of undisclosed LSAT content because, so believe it or not, they actually reuse a lot of LSAT questions on future administrations. And of course, that poses a problem if people are screen capturing and getting that information and sharing it with others for the future. All right, I see other questions coming in. Matrix Invaders asking, these changes don't affect the June LSAT. Yes, that's correct. So anyone taking the LSAT in April or June, it's the current format that we've been accustomed to for the past couple years, but anyone taking August or beyond will have to adjust to the new format. I'm hopeful and I expect that since the LSAT will also be primarily in person starting in August, that the computer monitors at Prometric will be large enough to render the interface cleanly without splitting the passage across 2 different columns like I was mentioning earlier. But with rare exceptions, folks might be taking the LSAT remotely if you have a medical accommodation or if it would pose an undue hardship for you to travel physically to an in-person testing center. Like if you live in a really remote area where there's nothing nearby for you, you want to have a large computer monitor to render the interface cleanly. Other questions coming in here. I see Alex is asking, what's the best way to study for the LSAT? Textbooks, online courses, or both? Well, definitely not textbooks because the LSAT is online now. You want to prepare for it like it's going to be on game day. The typical student's score drops from 5 to 8 points or more from the practice test to the actual, and a large part of that is because you're not familiar with the software. And like I mentioned, of course, the new interface, you want to get familiar with that. If you're taking the LSAT studying out of a book, of course, That's not helping you get familiar with the format. And furthermore, I mean, the LSAT has changed so much in recent years that the prep books are out of date. A lot of these prep books are talking about logic games. Logic games hasn't been on the test for nearly 2 years. And the LSAT also has changed in more subtle ways as well, more of an emphasis on formal logic and conditional reasoning and numbers and percentages after the removal of logic games. The books aren't talking about that. There was the change to reading comp back in January where they stopped giving some folks dual or comparative passages. The books aren't talking about that. And a lot of these books on Amazon are AI slop with fake reviews. And the AI slop is using unrealistic LSAT questions that contain mistakes, assuming that logic games is still on the test because ChatGPT is not up to date on that current LSAT format. And so don't waste time on that. Use the online courses that are more up to date. AJM says, sir, you're wrong. Okay, well, feel free to disagree. I mean, great minds can differ, of course, but what specifically do you think I'm wrong about? Feel free to drop that. In the meantime, I'll get to another question here. Matrix Invaders asking, if I think I can get a score in the upper 160s to possibly 170 or greater in June, should I wait and apply for fall 2027 instead to secure a greater scholarship, applying earlier in the cycle with more scholarship money available? Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I mean, if you think you can do better to get the higher score and apply at the beginning of next cycle. I mean, we're already pretty late in this cycle, right? I mean, it's already March. You're taking the LSAT at the soonest in April, which is already the tail end of this cycle. If you can get your score up from wherever you're at right now, I don't know what you're currently scoring, but if you can get to 170 plus by June, then yeah, I would apply this fall in September to start law school in fall 2027. With a higher LSAT score applying earlier, you've got multiple benefits to waiting, and you're going to improve your odds of getting in, improve your odds of getting scholarship money as well. See, AJM says bird law. So that was the constructive criticism there. I'm wrong because of bird law. Okay. Always Sunny fan there. Appreciate that. Zoe's asking, is it pointless to take the LSAT if I intend to do the correspondence law school? So by correspondence law school, do you mean going to law school online? I mean, traditionally we called it correspondence school, but now that online has risen in prominence, there's a lot more people going for online law school. You've got programs that are totally online. You've got programs that are hybrid. You've got St. Mary's, Syracuse, Mitchell Hamlin, and others offering partial or fully online law school, but you still want to take the LSAT to get in and also get significant scholarship money as well. So the fact that you're going to law school online doesn't change the calculation in terms of what it takes to get in, what it takes to get scholarship money. You still want the strongest LSAT score. You still want the strongest GPA. And taking the LSAT can help you significantly in terms of getting into better schools and getting more scholarship money, whether you're going remotely or in person. Officers asking, when's it too early to start studying for the LSAT? I would say if someone is in high school or a freshman in college, that's probably earlier than it needs to be. I think if you started as a junior, that might be sufficient time. In other words, freshman and sophomore year or prior, focus on your GPA, focus on determining whether law school is truly what you want to do. But then once you hit junior year, you could then start studying for the LSAT. I think typically most folks can knock out the LSAT in 6 months or less. If you really want a top LSAT score, then maybe giving yourself closer to a year might be helpful, but I don't think that you need more than a year, certainly, and most folks don't need more than 6 months. And if you study efficiently, of course, you can knock it out faster. See, Junaid's asking, I got a 142 with 2 weeks of prep, planning to retake in June, aiming for a 165 or higher. Is it possible? So you've got roughly 2.5 months to improve 23 points. Is it possible? Yeah, it is possible. It's going to take some work, of course, but you only put in 2 weeks so far. And so you've really only scratched the tip of the iceberg. If you put in more time, you get yourself some support. I mean, the sky is really the limit. Things that when you're studying on your own, you don't know what you don't know. But once we add some support into the mix, there's usually a pretty quick score boost, meaning there's going to be a lot of low-hanging fruit. And so what we do during the free LSAT tutoring lesson, we look at where you're currently scoring, what your goal score is, how to get you from here to there over your time frame. For anyone looking for help, I'm offering free LSAT tutoring for anybody watching this now or later. We could talk through your action plan. The link to book that free tutoring with me is unpluggedprep.com/start. Link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and Instagram as well. Open offer for anybody watching this now or later. I see Rennie's asking, I'm at a 163 diagnostic. How many hours per week should I study if I'm aiming for a 174 or higher? So to be clear, I mean, a 175 puts you in the top 1%. And so if you want to be in the top 1%, you got to study differently than the other 99%, right? So I think asking how much should I study is not the right question, to be frank. I would be asking, how can I carve out the time in my life to give this my all, given that I want an elite level score? Whatever your diagnostic is, if you want a 174, 175 plus, you got to max it out, right? You want to achieve the highest possible score by putting in the maximum possible amount of time, but also look at the way in which you're studying, because the score that you achieve is a function of the amount that you study combined with the way in which you study. If you can level up the efficiency of your prep, you can get to your goal score faster and put in less time, or you can achieve an even higher score putting in as much time as you would have otherwise. So the question becomes, what are you currently doing? What could you be doing better? A lot of students just drill questions by type without ever doing full-length exams. Others do nothing but full-length exams without building out the proper foundation first. And so, of course, the optimal is the proper mix of drilling questions by type, doing individual sections to work on pacing and time management, and then taking full-length exams to build up your endurance. And if you're looking for guidance on mapping out what your study plan could look like, you can book the free tutoring with me through the link in my bio. At LSAT Unplugged, beyond the free tutoring lesson with me, we offer intensive private one-on-one coaching programs, small group coaching via Zoom 4 nights a week, on-demand courses, custom study plans. We always like to personalize the program to the individual student because everyone's got a different starting point, a different goal, and a different time frame. So what we offer is not a one-size-fits-all like the apps and courses like Kaplan and Princeton. We offer a more personalized service. And so if you want to talk through that, you can book the free tutoring with me. I see Overfears is asking, when should I start studying for the LSAT if I want to aim for a top score? I mean, the best time was yesterday. Second best time is today, right? The sooner you start, the sooner you can improve. Again, I don't think that you need to start in freshman year of college. I think if you're a freshman in college, you want to explore whether law school is really what you want to do at all. And of course, focus on maintaining your GPA because that matters as well. But at a certain point, as you get into sophomore, junior year, it's time to start thinking about the LSAT. And if you're already out of college, then just get started now. I mean, you could start studying now in late March, take the LSAT in June or August, and apply to law school the second applications open in September. You'd be starting in fall 2026 to start law school in fall 2027. And applying earlier in the cycle is better, all else being equal. Jessica's asking, what about for a splitter? Is there a best time to apply? So whether you are a splitter, a reverse splitter, or neither, meaning splitter being high LSAT, low GPA, reverse splitter being high GPA, low LSAT, or neither, meaning your numbers are above the medians or below the medians, regardless, the answer is the same. The best time to apply is in September, the second that applications open. Law schools operate on a rolling admissions basis, meaning that when you apply earlier, it's a bit easier to get in, and there's relatively more scholarship money available. As the cycle goes on, there are fewer seats available, and they've given out some of the scholarship money, so it gets a bit harder to get in. And speaking now in the spring, you can apply to law school in September. No reason you couldn't. And that's what I would do regardless of what your numbers are, but of course you want your numbers to be as strong as possible. But when we're in the spring, you've got plenty of time to take the LSAT and get a top score. I see Christians asking, thoughts on applying to law schools now when 5 to 7 points above the median LSAT score, but my GPA is average. So if by now you mean applying later in the cycle in late March, you could. Some law schools will still accept applications. Some won't. But you would be better off applying next cycle instead. Of course, there is an opportunity cost to delaying things a year. So you got to consider what's the cost of spending another year in the status quo situation versus another year on the opposite end after graduation as an attorney. You could apply now, see what kinds of offers you get. And if you don't love the offers you get, then just apply next cycle instead. And if you want to talk through the particulars, you could book the free tutoring with me and we could talk through it more. Kate asks, don't we have enough laws? I guess she's arguing against the need for attorneys in general. Well, the cool thing is that attorneys can both help to create new laws and they can also strike down old laws. So if you become a lawyer and you become a judge, you could actually invalidate some laws and then we'd have fewer laws. I see Suri's asking, I'm a council member for my town. Do I need a law degree if my aspiration is to become a state representative? No, actually you don't. You do not need to be an attorney in order to be a politician. We've had several recent presidents, including the current one, who are not attorneys, and same goes for legislators both in Congress as well as in state government. I actually have a student in my courses right now who's a state representative in Arizona, and she's studying for the LSAT. So no, you don't need to be an attorney to become a state rep. I see Jay's asking, should you go to the highest level law school, like the highest ranked law school, or should you go to a school that offers a full scholarship? Yeah, great question. So there's this trade-off between prestige and scholarship money. You could theoretically go to Harvard Law and pay full tuition, sticker price, or you could go to a lower ranked law school with a full ride and pay zero in tuition. And there are pros and cons to each situation. For some folks, better to choose Harvard Law and take out the loan if they want to go into big law. For other folks, it might be better to go to a lower ranked law school, get more scholarship money, and pay zero in tuition. Depends what you want to do after graduation. There is no right or wrong answer to this. Each one has its own benefits and drawbacks. G's asking, can you still apply to start law school in fall 2026? Yeah, you can. I mean, there are approximately 200 American Bar Association approved law schools. Each one has its own deadlines and requirements. Some law schools will still take the results of the April and June LSATs. Some will not. It varies from school to school. The best way to find out is just to call up the schools or email them and ask, are you still accepting applications? Some will, some won't. You got to reach out and see. There's no downside to asking, of course. Trey asks, do I pick a school I don't like with a 65% scholarship over the better school with a $0 scholarship? Well, don't pick a school you don't like. If you don't like the school, why would you go there? You're going to spend 3 years of your life there and pay them a decent chunk of change. Now, when you say you don't like the school, I'm taking that literally here. If you mean I don't like the reputation of this school because it's lower ranked, but they're giving me more scholarship money, should I choose a lower ranked school with more scholarships over a better school with no scholarship? That's a trade-off worth considering, and there's not a clear right answer on this. The question is, even if the school has a lower reputation or a lower ranking, will it still be sufficient to help you achieve your career goals? Given what you want to do with your law degree, is the school's reputation so terrible that you won't be able to achieve your career goals with a degree from that school? You also want to look at, what is this lower ranked school's bar passage rates? What are their employment outcomes? Are there people with degrees from that school doing what you want to do? Or is the school's reputation so low that you won't be able to get a job where you want to get a job? You also don't need to take the offers as they stand right now, meaning you can change the terms by negotiating. In other words, you can go to the better school that offered you no money and say, I would really love to go to your school, but school I don't like offered me way more money. Don't say you don't like the school, of course, just say the name of the school or not, and say that I got another offer with a better scholarship offer. Can you match or exceed that? And see what they say. The worst they can say is no, but certainly worth trying. Billy Boy asks, if you are a splitter, are your chances of a full ride lower? I mean, if your numbers are lower, your odds of a full ride become lower, whether it's a low GPA or a low LSAT. If your numbers are stronger, your odds of getting a full ride are better. But law schools weigh your LSAT score more heavily than your undergraduate GPA. And so better to be a splitter than to be a reverse splitter. And if your LSAT is lower than you want it to be, you can retake the LSAT, get a higher score, increase your odds of getting more scholarship money, no matter what your GPA is. And the higher your numbers are above the medians, the more likely you are to get significant scholarship money, as well as get a full ride. And again, negotiate. Don't take the first offer they give you. You are going to be a future attorney after all. The time to start negotiating is now. Officers asking, is it even worth going to law school if I only get into a lower ranked one? Maybe. I mean, ranking isn't everything. Consider the scholarship offers that you get as well. There is a lot to be said for not taking on debt, getting a full ride plus room and board and fees covered, maybe even bar exam prep covered as well, a living stipend. I think in many cases, it is worth to go to a lower ranked school with more scholarship money and getting a full ride, paying zero in tuition, getting a JD for free, not having to pay for law school at all. I think that's a goal and an outcome that are worth pursuing. And whether you want to go to a lower ranked school with more scholarship money or a more prestigious school, the ultimate way to get to the best possible outcomes is the same: higher LSAT score, higher GPA. The thing is that your GPA is probably pretty set in stone by this point if you're watching videos and lives about the LSAT. If you've already finished junior or senior year, you're not going to have much of any impact on your GPA at this late stage, but you can retake the LSAT and improve your odds significantly. It's funny how a single day of 2.5 hours weighs more heavily than all 3 to 4 years of undergrad combined, but that's just the nature of the game because GPAs are not really comparable because different folks have different majors from different kinds of universities with different degrees of grade inflation, while in contrast, the LSAT is a great equalizer that is a more of an apples to apples comparison between applicants of different backgrounds. And so if you've already taken the LSAT, you can retake it quite easily. It's offered 8 times a year, so there's always another one around the corner coming up in a month or two. Coming up, we got the April LSAT in roughly 2 weeks or so. Some folks are like, don't remind me. But you've also got June beyond that in 2.5 months. You've got August in 4.5 months. Then there's September, October, and November. You could take any of the remaining LSATs coming up this calendar year and apply to law school this coming cycle. And I think that everyone should actually retake the LSAT for the simple reason that law schools do not average multiple LSAT scores. They only take into consideration the highest score on your record, meaning there is no downside to retaking. If you do worse, no big deal. The previous higher score still counts. If you do better, congrats. Now you've got a higher score to work with. I see Gavin's asking, I've taken the LSAT twice and did not get a great score, 156 and 159. Should I try again? Yeah, probably. If you didn't get a great score, take it again, study more. In the opposite order, by the way, first study more and then take it again, and then retake for a higher score. You will get significantly better outcomes in admissions with a 165 or a 170 than with anything in the 150s range. 159 might get you in, but isn't going to get you a ton of scholarship money at most law schools worth going to. But with a 165, 170, you will see significantly better outcomes. And so the question is, what are you going to do differently next time around in your prep to get a higher score? And how did you study in the lead up to this one? Did you just self-study with a textbook like LSAT for Dummies? Or did you take a course? Did you get coaching? What support have you not yet taken advantage of that you could take advantage of next time to significantly improve your score? At LSAT Unplugged, we use the LASER approach to LSAT prep when helping our students design study plans. LASER is an acronym that stands for Learning, Accuracy, Sections, Exams, and Review. Learning is building the foundation, getting a proper overview in the different sections and the different question types. A is for accuracy, drilling questions by type, to better understand the proper perspective from which to view each section and each question type. S is for individual sections, working on pacing and time management. E is for exams and endurance, doing full-length practice tests, ideally 10 to 15 of them before the big day, so test day itself feels like just another run-through. By the way, that's also a great time to get familiar with the new LSAC Law Hub interface starting in August. And then, of course, you have R for review, using the Socratic review method incorporated throughout the process. And so this is the foundational study plan framework that we use whenever you're taking the LSAT, if you're brand new or you're a retaker. But if you are retaking, look at what you're going to do differently next time around. Is there one of these phases that you have neglected that you want to incorporate into your prep going forward? If you want to talk through the details, of course, you can book the free LSAT tutoring lesson with me. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. It's unpluggedprep.com/start. Kevin's asking, I'm new to the process, always wanted to pursue law, but then the pandemic happened. Are scholarships normal? Yeah, scholarships are normal. I think that most students actually get some kind of scholarship for law school. The question is, how can you maximize the scholarship? Because you don't just want $5,000, $10,000 a year off your tuition. You want 30 to 50 off your tuition and ideally get a full ride. And the way you get that full ride, the way you maximize your scholarships is by having strong numbers going into the application process. There's your LSAT score and your GPA, but LSAT score weighs more heavily and is also more easy to impact, so that's why we focus there. Players asking, what can you do if you've been arrested in your younger years at 19, but did better in school? So the good news is that if it has been a couple of years or more since you got arrested, who you were back at 19 is not who you are today. You've grown, you've changed, you've matured. If it was yesterday, it's harder to make that case, right? But if it's been a couple of years or more, you can clearly put some distance between yourself and the previous events. And of course, you're probably going to want to write some kind of addendum or character and fitness disclosure talking about what happened. Every law school has some version of that character and fitness question asking about if you have been arrested, if you've been convicted, was it a misdemeanor, was it a felony? Depending on the particulars, you may or may not need to disclose. Look at the wording carefully, answer honestly, be forthright. If you don't answer honestly, if you make a lie of omission and you don't include what you should about this, then it could come back to bite you later when you go before the bar. You don't want to fail to get admitted to the bar and become an attorney because you were not honest on your law school application. But most things that you might have on your record are not going to pose a serious problem for you getting into law school. Don't make excuses, don't blame other people, just explain matter of fact what happened and why, and give them reason to trust that nothing like that will happen again. But if it was underage drinking or shoplifting, things of that nature, any speeding tickets, for example, traffic infractions, those sorts of things are not a big deal. And if it was worse than that, could still be okay. Also, if you want to talk through the particulars, of course, you can book a free lesson with me through the link in my bio and we could talk through it more. Gavin's asking, any advice on where I can get access to some full-length LSAT prep tests? I've used the ones on LSAC. So there are 59 numbered exams on the LSAC Law Hub platform, numbered 101 to 159. If you've used all of those, there are also the drill sets on LSAC and the individual sections on Law Hub as well. So you're going to want to look at those as well. Then there are a handful of out-of-print exams that are available on Amazon that might be out of print, but are available through third-party sellers. I see someone in the chat is selling some as well, so check those out. Maybe there are some that you have not yet used. But I wonder if you actually need to go beyond the tests available on Law Hub, because there are approximately 8,000 questions on there. And the question is, if you were to even redo the ones you've done in the past, would you get a perfect score on them? If not, there is probably still something for you to learn from redoing those exam questions. We work with a lot of retakers who are LSAT completionists and think they've done every exam ever released, but they're still getting mediocre scores on those when they come to us. And so the question is, have you truly learned the lesson from those questions? I mean, I actually interviewed a guy who used to write official LSAT questions, the videos on my YouTube channel, a couple of them actually. And one thing he said that stuck with me was that even if you were to do only 10 exams worth of material, if you knew those 10 exams inside out and understood them thoroughly, you would be ready for whatever LSAC threw your way. And I think there's a lot of validity to that. Hey, Miguel, glad you're enjoying this. Thanks, folks. And by the way, folks, if you're just joining live, I do these lives every single weekday, same time, same place. The link to I do these on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. If you find them helpful, please spread the word. The only way these lives grows through word of mouth. I don't do any advertising for them, and the algorithm doesn't really boost these because they can't run ads during them. And so please share this to your socials on TikTok, share it in group chats, Discord, Facebook groups, subreddits. I do appreciate the support. I see Macron's asking, could you talk about international students? Okay, so if you did your undergrad outside the US and you're applying to law school in the US, one thing you should know is that law schools do not consider your undergraduate GPA because they don't know how to interpret transcripts from universities outside the US and they don't really care to learn. And so for that reason, the GPA is not a factor for you and your LSAT score becomes that much more important. So all the more reason for you to give additional emphasis to your LSAT score if you did your undergrad outside the US, and if you are a non-native English speaker, you also want to demonstrate proficiency in English on your LSAT writing sample and in your law school application essays. And we have a lot of experience working with non-native English speakers and helping international students navigate the admissions process. And so if you want to talk through the particulars, of course, you can book the free tutoring with me through the link in my bio. The link is unpluggedprep.com/start. See a follow-up asking, what do you think is the best LSAT to make up for the GPA? A 180, ideally. I mean, there's no reason not to shoot for a perfect score, right? The higher your LSAT score is, the better your odds of admission are, the more merit scholarship money you're going to get as well. And the LSAT score, again, weighs even more heavily when you don't have a GPA for them to consider. Chocolate's asking, what if you have a law degree in another country? What's the process? I mean, it doesn't really change. In the US, law school is a graduate level degree. In other countries, law is an undergrad level degree. There are ways to avoid going to law school in the US and still be able to practice law by getting an LLM, I think, is the process. I'm not super detailed oriented on that side of things. I just focus on helping students get into law school particularly. But for admission to law schools in the US, it's your LSAT score is the number one factor, GPA is the number two factor, everything else is a distant third. But no, you don't need to have a 180 to get into a top 14 law school. But let's look at the medians, right? So for a top 14 law school, the LSAT medians are a 170 to 174. Schools like Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Columbia, Cornell, NYU, and so on. The LSAT benchmark that you want to hit or exceed, it ranges 170 to 174. Their GPA medians are roughly around a 3.9. If you have no undergraduate GPA to submit, they're going to look more closely at your LSAT score as the sole indicator of your academic potential and as a predictor of your ability to do well in law school and to pass the bar exam. So I would always aim above the medians of the law schools to which you're applying, regardless of whether you have an undergraduate GPA that they can interpret or not. So if you want a top 14 law school, aim for 175 plus. And again, folks, I know I'm only able to answer these questions broadly here in the context of a live. If you want to get more personal feedback on your situation in a more of a live conversation beyond what we can do in a chat here, you can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me at unpluggedprep.com/start. Link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and Instagram as well. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific. I'll see you all then. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care. Thanks for joining.